Tonight, setting the record straight.
Chief Poundmaker is fully exonerated of any crime or wrongdoing.
A step towards reconciliation 134 years in the making. What it means to those who fought so hard to get it.
I just thought we were all gonna die.
Tornadoes flattened several U.S. communities. Why it's been such a deadly week.
I think it can do more harm than good.
And questions about the Liberal plan to help the media. Plus, the effectiveness of wedge politics at issue weighs in. This is The National. The government has called reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous peoples a guiding principle. The progress can be debated, but there's little doubt today saw a significant milestone. In the hills of West Central Saskatchewan, on the reserve that bears the name of a revered and wrongly convicted First Nations leader, the Prime Minister arrived to set right a historic wrong and recognize a true legacy, something the descendants of Cree Chief Poundmaker have long worked for. Bonnie Allen was there.
A symbolic climb up a steep hill, the same path government forces took 134 years ago to ambush Chief Poundmaker and his people. Today, the Prime Minister came in peace, armed with an apology and this.
I am here today on behalf of the Government of Canada to confirm without reservation that Chief Poundmaker is fully exonerated of any crime or wrongdoing.
Redemption at last, celebrated in a ceremony punctuated with poignant, symbolic moments, like this handshake with the current chief. Long ago, a Canadian general refused to shake hands with Poundmaker.
What happened today here we will never forget.
In 1885, Canada was in the midst of its first and only civil war, the Northwest Rebellion, led by Louis Riel and his Métis supporters. But Chief Poundmaker, like most First Nations leaders, tried to stay out of it. After a military ambush at this site, Chief Poundmaker stopped his warriors from chasing after the retreating Canadian soldiers, likely stopping a massacre. But he wasn't celebrated as a hero. He was convicted of treason felony.
It was a real smear job.
Blair Stonechild co-authored a book that revealed the Canadian government had an ulterior motive to prosecute First Nations chiefs.
The government's agenda essentially was to gain control over Indigenous people. It had nothing to do with justice.
Poundmaker's incarceration and death soon after was followed by decades of government oppression and a legacy of distrust between non-Indigenous and Indigenous people. With hope for a new era, Trudeau laid tobacco on Poundmaker's grave as a sign of respect.
You know, when people heal and forgive, it's after an apology.
This day was also about telling the truth. Truth, elders say, must come before reconciliation. Many embraced both here today. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Poundmaker, Cree Nation, Saskatchewan.
Here's the view from outside high-level Alberta, where air tankers dropped flame retardant to ward off the province's largest wildfire. It is burning out of control, 3 kilometers from the town. That fire could soon cover 1,000 square kilometers. About 4,000 people were ordered out of the region on Monday, but there are still people in and around high level working to protect it. They've been carrying out controlled burns along highways to consume fuel that might spread the wildfire. Crews have been using heavy equipment to build a fire guard on the northeast side of the fire. Inside high level, more than 100 firefighters are removing debris and other flammable material in case the worst happens. Now, Rafi Boudjikanian gives us a ground level view of these crucial efforts.
Helicopters are part of the battle to push back this monster of a fire, whether to observe the flames' behavior or help ignite those controlled burns. Today, the fire grew again.
The high-level area is currently experiencing drought-like conditions, paired with the dry weather conditions we've had and the gusty winds has made firefighting extremely challenging.
So challenging that help has already arrived from BC and is on the way from the other end of the country.
You're always monitoring situation out west and in your local area, and you always have your bag ready to go because it can be 24 hours notice and we can be on the planes.
One change in the wind and the fire could start blowing closer to town. So sprinkler systems have been set up to keep flames away. High Level's mayor is asking the province to give more assistance to her evacuees.
We have a lot of people that, that we're not as affluent as other communities, and some of our most vulnerable people are out there right now without funds.
With climate change, this professor warns, longer fire seasons could now just be a fact of life in Western Canada.
We hear from people at the fire line that they've never seen fire like this, whether it's California or British Columbia or Alberta. And I believe them, that we are seeing more fire, more intense fire.
Nobody here is willing to predict when emergency workers might remove this roadblock, allowing people to come back home. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, High Level, Alberta.
There are two other fires burning out of control in northern Alberta, one near Peace River, the other near Slave Lake. That's where people still recall the devastation that a wildfire brought in 2011. Today, the threat hasn't come this close. The fire itself is not as large, but no one who went through this can forget the primal fear. Aaron Collins shows us how that memory haunts them still.
Oh, shit. 8 years on, the view from Sean Gramlich's house is very different, but the memory of being forced to abandon their old house is hard to shake.
No one had any desire or anything to leave, and fast forward 5 minutes and it's time to hit the road.
The Gramlich's house, one of nearly 400 that burned down in 2011. He says officials learned from their experience and now evacuate towns like High Level more quickly. It took 2 years of struggle and persistence for these plans to become reality.
That was the hardest part, 2 years of fighting with builders and insurance and stuff like that. It's a pain in the butt.
8 years ago, this was ground zero for the fire here. A stroll through the neighborhood today reveals a community transformed.
So back in 2011, this is the fire line.
Exactly, like here's two brand new homes. You go to this side of the road, everything's hunky-dory, nothing was touched. So beyond these houses, everything burned in this area of the southeast. This side of the road, untouched.
The help they received back then compels them to pay it forward today. Now a town councillor, Gramlich is part of a team helping High Level's evacuees.
Yeah, but when we were here in Lincoln, I believe the pool and stuff and everyone's...
Small acts of kindness repeated again and again here.
The lady that works at the restaurant in the hotel, she was an evacuee from Slave Lake, and she's telling us she's been through this and it'll all work out, hopefully.
No one knows when High Level's evacuees will be able to go home. That very much depends on which way the wind blows. But whatever the future holds, Gramlich and the people of Slave Lake are ready.
If need be, we got cots and blankets ready to go if any more evacuees show up.
Armed with knowledge and compassion forged in fire. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Slave Lake, Alberta.
South of the border, fires aren't the problem. It's tornadoes. Storms and torrential rains have been ravaging the American Midwest this week. Missouri has taken the biggest hit so far with a series of overnight tornadoes, leaving a trail of death and debris. Stephen D'Souza has been tracking that story.
In Missouri's state capital, they woke up to take stock of the storm's brute strength. Buildings shattered and shredded. Debris spread like matchsticks. Homes torn open from above. The massive tornado that hit last night cut a path about 5 kilometers long and almost 2 kilometers wide. It hit just before midnight, the accompanying lightning giving residents a brief glimpse of the destructive force that was about to lay waste to their town.
Within 30 seconds of me waking up, getting downstairs, I heard the strongest ones I've ever heard in my life. And objects, sticks, wind, anything hitting the house, the windows, in the room we were hiding in downstairs.
After it was over, Casey Bull went to check on family members and realized what he had survived.
Went upstairs because it sounded like a train had hit the house, make sure Grandpa was okay since he's still upstairs. Went upstairs, checked on Grandpa, looked in the back spare bedroom. The corner of the house was gone.
That was one of nearly 24 tornadoes to hit the region Wednesday. The deadliest hit the town of Golden, killing 3 people. One estimate suggests that tornado had an 80-kilometer-long path and was on the ground for an hour and 20 minutes. Satellite imagery shows the power of the storms across Missouri, part of a system that for several days has pounded the Midwest with torrential rains and twisters. The flooding from those storms swept 2 unmanned barges along the Arkansas River, sending them crashing into this dam in Oklahoma, which luckily wasn't damaged. Residents in Missouri, though, had more than their share of damage and plenty to clean up. Fortunately, no one in Jefferson was killed.
We're very, very thankful that it happened at night when most people were likely, at home and they heard the outdoor warning sirens.
But while the tornadoes have passed, the danger isn't over. There are still flood warnings and a river that could top a levee as early as tomorrow. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
Wow, Canadians got the lowdown today on the upcoming hurricane season. Forecasters here and in the United States say it should be a, quote, normal year with as many as 15 named storms. That still means there's a lot of activity.
4 to 8 will become hurricanes with top winds of at least 74 miles an hour, and 2 to 4 major hurricanes reaching category 3, 4, or 5.
And they warn it's not always wind that causes the most damage. The real danger comes from the storm surge and then the flooding. That was the case last year with 2 major hurricanes, Michael and Florence. Together, they killed dozens of people in the U.S. and caused billions of dollars in damages. A story with some disturbing implications has emerged from a First Nations community in northern Manitoba. The RCMP are investigating allegations that 17 children were physically and sexually abused at a foster home, and police say there may be more victims. The children were in the foster care in Garden Hill First Nation. That's a remote fly-in community. It's about 600 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. Cameron McIntosh has the details.
RCMP say it started with 3 child sexual assault complaints in Garden Hill and quickly got much bigger and more disturbing. 17 children aged 3 to 15, many of them in foster care. 3 people have been charged.
It was learned that this accused had access to a residence that was a foster home for numerous children in the community.
He says that could mean even more victims.
We recognize the possibility that there may be more children who have been victimized that have not yet been identified.
To help jog any memories, police released this picture of 21-year-old Paul Bruce Harper. He faces numerous charges of physical and sexual abuse. A 20-year-old man who was a minor at the time faces similar charges, while Harper's 66-year-old grandmother Lucy is charged with perjury and failure to report a child in need of protection and failure to provide for a child in need of protection. She ran the foster home. It's unclear who was overseeing her. The authority responsible for child welfare in Garden Hill is only saying it's cooperating with the RCMP. As for the province,
we're going to continue to allow the interviews, the investigation to take place. We don't intervene in RCMP investigation.
We need to address the overall issue with child welfare in this province.
Manitoba's Grand Chief says the scale of this will require help from outside the community.
Whatever may have happened to them, and that I encourage them to be courageous and come forward, and that we're all here to support them.
We recognize that calling the police can be a difficult step to take. I want to assure you that our investigators are professional and compassionate.
Now, this news has many asking, how does this happen in a system that's supposed to protect children? As in the past in Manitoba's beleaguered child welfare system, that question is being deflected as officials cite privacy law. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some of the other stories we are following tonight, including a war of words continuing in Washington.
Again, I pray for the President of the United States. I wish that his family or his administration or his staff would have an intervention for the good of the country.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi not mincing words there after saying Donald Trump threw a temper tantrum and stormed out of a meeting yesterday. That meeting was supposed to be about infrastructure, but just beforehand, Pelosi accused the president of a cover-up over the Russia investigation, so Trump fired back.
I have been watching her for a long period of time. She's not the same person. She's lost it. I'm an extremely stable genius.
What lawmakers did manage to do today was pass a $19 billion disaster relief bill through the Senate. That will provide aid to places like California after last year's devastating wildfires and even Puerto Rico 2 years after Hurricane Maria. The bill was passed without funding for the president's border wall. We are expecting a bit of a change of pace from Andrew Scheer tomorrow. The opposition leader is planning to drop a previous pledge to balance the budget within 2 years if elected. That time frame will instead be pushed out to 5 years. Scheer says the Liberal government has made a 2-year plan impossible to carry out responsibly. An already controversial item in the last Liberal budget is now under even more scrutiny. It's all to do with new details about who will help organize the government's $600 million media fund. As David Cochrane explains, the plan to help journalism is being questioned by many journalists.
The Telegram newsroom in St. John's has gone through a lot of downsizing over the years, losing more than half its staff since the late 1990s. But the paper's top columnist says federal money isn't the solution.
I just don't think it's the right solution. I think it carries the potential to do more harm to news industry's credibility than it does to actually do anything more than protect existing systems in the short term.
The government has asked 8 unions and journalism groups to help decide who might qualify for federal support. But the plan to save journalism is making some journalists uneasy.
You have people who are dead set against the government giving any kind of money to media. We've got some people who feel like something is necessary because it's important to keep news going.
The CAJ represents more than 700 journalists across the country, and Pugliese has been hearing from many who are worried about how this looks.
What they're concerned about is not that they're going to suddenly give good coverage to the Liberals over the Conservatives because it's an election year and this money's coming. What they're concerned about is that people are going to think that.
Unifor's role has become a flashpoint in this. It represents many journalists across the country, but its president, Jerry Dias, has a good relationship with the Prime Minister. And the Unifor leadership has self-identified as stridently anti-conservative, which the Conservatives are now using as a fundraiser, calling this money an election year media bailout package that is co-opting the media.
Journalists that pay dues to Unifor are just like any of our other members who pay dues to Unifor or to other unions, and they have a perspective that's independent of Unifor, and particularly where journalism is concerned, they have professional standards that they live up to every day.
So, David, the Canadian Association of Journalists, the CAJ as it's called, has been invited, I guess, to advise the government on this, but we're now hearing that's maybe not going to happen, or?
Yeah, it's certainly not certain. The board doesn't know yet what it's going to do. It's going to meet on Monday to decide if it'll accept the government's invitation. And Karen Pugliese tells me the CAJ just doesn't know what its final decision will be, but says they do have some conditions, that the funding process will have to be as transparent and as arm's length from the politicians as possible. Now, the government tells us that is their goal, though the details haven't been sorted out. And Rosie, one final point on Unifor, whose involvement in this is controversial. The union says it's happy to be involved at this stage to advise on the criteria for the funding, but when it comes to the process of deciding what media gets what money, the union says it should not be involved in that, and it will not be involved in that.
Okay. David Cochrane in Ottawa with this story tonight. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Ahead tonight, why are Canadian politicians talking about abortion rights? At Issue tackles the risks and rewards of wedge politics. First, though, a landslide political win in India. Nala Ayed looks at what it means for the future of that country. Plus,
all of a sudden, in less than 24 hours, it went from looking for Dave to finding Dave. I called him today at noon.
They last saw each other, look at that, over 50 years ago, backpacking in Europe. The search for Dave from Vancouver Island is ahead. Narendra Modi's supporters have plenty to celebrate. He's won a historic victory in India's national election. About 300 of the 543 seats in parliament. That's a second straight majority, a first for an Indian prime minister in half a century. It's the kind of mandate most politicians dream of, but as Nala Ayed shows us, the question is whether Modi can deliver results.
The sound of victory. For the believers, it wasn't beyond expectations, but once confirmed, it was certainly beyond imagination. Because many here were convinced they would have a majority, but they couldn't have guessed its magnitude.
The message is quite clear that India is rising, and they need to think from a different point of perspective to the Indians.
It isn't often in India's fractious politics that one party, one prime minister wins back-to-back outright majorities. Narendra Modi, showered with adulation at party headquarters, is back both with more popular vote and more seats. If anyone has won, it's the people of India, he says, so all of us dedicate this win to the public. Week after week, as voters in the hundreds of millions went to the polls in 7 phases, Modi relentlessly stayed front and center with a Hindu nationalist and anti-elite message that also focused on his roots as a tea seller's son and his self-appointed role as the nation's protector.
Now again, he's doing for his country. And he's the best Prime Minister of India.
His win cements the upending of traditional politics here, once dominated by the Congress Party, now further weakened as an opposition.
New Prime Minister has been elected, and today is the day to wish him all the best, and to hopefully he will look after the interest of this country.
Detractors, though, worry about Modi's divisive, polarizing influence, his alienation of minorities, and a shrinking space for opposing views.
I mean, fear is not a good thing in democracy. I mean, there was a time one could say what one wanted in India. You could stand on the road and, abuse anybody. And it's the job of the government to listen.
Modi promised to unify his people. Just as daunting, the millions of young people without jobs, the millions more living in poverty. A powerful mandate, yes, but the expectations are immense. Nala Ayed, CBC News, New Delhi.
At Issue is coming up right after the break. Althea is in tonight with Chantal and Andrew. A win for the government on U.S. tariffs this week, but far from it when it comes to relations with China. We'll tackle that next. A judge in Chicago has ordered Jussie Smollett's criminal case unsealed. The actor was initially granted privacy, but the court says he's forfeited that right by talking to the media. Smollett faced 16 counts of lying to police for staging an attack on himself back in January. In March, though, those charges were suddenly dropped. The U.S. has filed 17 new charges against Julian Assange, accusing the WikiLeaks founder of violating the Espionage Act by publishing classified material. WikiLeaks responded on Twitter, calling the new charges madness. Assange is currently serving time in jail in the UK for breaching bail.
They've broken all their promises, and that's why we're in these elections. And the whole thing's a nonsense.
That's Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage making clear his feelings while voting in the European Parliament elections. Polls in the UK and Netherlands have now closed. Voting in other EU nations will happen over the next 3 days. The result won't be announced until Sunday.
As a government, as Canadians, we will always be unequivocal about defending women's right to choose, defending women's rights in general. It's a shame that we increasingly see conservative governments and conservative politicians taking away rights that have been hard fought over many, many years.
As I've said many, many times before, the Conservative government will not reopen this debate. I've been very clear on this. And I find it disgusting and appalling that the Liberals are using this issue to divide Canadians and distract from their record of failure and corruption and scandals. They are literally trying to import a divisive issue from the United States to spread fear.
So the politics around abortion south of the border have, in fact, made their way into our political discourse, at least in terms of a wedge issue, working to create divisions amongst voters. So just how effective is this kind of tactic, and what kind of impact can it have during the federal election? It's Thursday, and that means At Issue's here to dig into that and a little more. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj is here in Ottawa tonight. Good to see everyone. So, I think that the idea that there is anxiety amongst some Canadian women watching what's happening in the United States is real. I think that's a real thing. But the issue of using abortion as a wedge issue is interesting. And I wonder, Andrew, maybe I'll start with you, how effective it is to take these little issues and try and split the electorate like that.
It can be effective. Every party does it, and every party is mortally offended when the other parties do it. So when the other guys do it, it's a wedge issue. When we do it, it's just drawing significant contrasts. When the other guys do it, it's a fear campaign. When we do it, we're just raising salient facts. It helps if you're going to have a wedge issue, if you're trying to divide the electorate, if you are actually divided on the issue. That is to say, if there's a likelihood of the Tories and the Liberals significantly dividing on the question of should Canada pass an abortion law. The Liberals have been going to this well in every election that I can recall. The Tories have never, when they've been in power, gone near the issue in terms of a government bill, and I don't think anybody really believes that they will. So you risk, if you keep coming back to this, looking like you're crying wolf.
So there's inherent danger in all wedge politics, Chantal, or just this particular one, or it has to be based in some facts and reality, I guess?
Well, on this one, but in general, wedge politics is also about party branding. If you feel insecure over an issue, because the context has changed, and that would be the temptation that was open to the Liberals on abortion with what has been happening in Alabama. The subliminal message is, you can trust us, but you can't be so sure about these other guys because their leader has voted for all kinds of motions and private members' bill in a previous life that would have reopened up to a point the abortion issue. So I don't think that it's very dangerous, but I do think that it usually involves issues that are core issues for a segment of voters and that will drive them to make a choice or to exclude a choice.
Althea.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole point of a campaign is to build coalitions either of support or coalitions in opposition to the other guy, right? And wedge issues help mobilize your potential voters to come out for you. And we've seen, yes, the Liberals use abortion in the last 2 weeks, for example, using what's happening down south as an example of a wedge issue. But we also saw them use that issue on the attestation form for the Canadian summer jobs, which frankly backfired because I think a lot of Liberal voters thought, wait a second, this overreach, I'm a churchgoer and I feel like you're attacking my rights. Am I not part of your coalition? We had them use the M103, the motion denouncing Islamophobia, as a wedge issue. We saw Maxime Bernier's party try to use the opposition against the UN Global Migration Compact as a wedge issue. And then Andrew Scheer adopted his position, so kind of nuanced that division that Mr. Bernier was trying to create amongst Conservatives. And we can expect to see a lot more, whether it's more talk about the abortion, frankly, because Andrew Scheer has not been clear. He's someone who supports freedom of conscience amongst all Conservative caucus members. So I think it's right for people to ask, well, would you whip your caucus to vote against would you whip your cabinet to vote against a backbench motion, which he hasn't answered clearly yet. But maybe even Bill Blair floated the idea possibly of a gun ban on semi-automatic rifles. Maybe that's something that would play with, suburban moms who are worried about mass attacks and think that a vote for the Liberal and a gun ban would be a good thing. Yeah. So there's going to be lots of them for sure.
Yeah. When you're a governing party, and particularly a governing party that's behind the polls, fear is your best friend. You want to raise doubts and fears about the unknown, the opposition party, And you can see the Liberals lining up a whole bunch of them now. They've got this whole tangle of issues around online hate speech and fake news and foreign interference and the sort of that tangle of uneasiness that people feel. They're pushing and prodding on that and trying to link that somehow to sort of populism and thereby from populism back to Andrew Scheer. We'll see again how successful that is, but again, a governing party quite often will go to that well of you know, why risk the unknown?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be fear, it's anxiety. And I think that the Liberals sense that that's there and there's something to go after. Yeah, Chantal.
Yes, but as Andrew says, it's not the Liberals, it's a government that may be in difficulty in the polls. Does anyone remember those ads that ran in some communities that the Conservatives sponsored over Justin Trudeau wanted to open brothels and literally hand out drugs to young people?
Yes. And those were curious.
And of course, the classic of the type was the short-lived soldiers in our streets.
Yes, the soldiers in the streets, yeah.
So they really can backfire if you're over the top.
Yeah,
and what about, you know, the niqab issue? Seriously, what was the niqab issue in the last election if it was not being created as a wedge issue? Or, you know, dog whistling to people who are uneasy about diversity by creating this sudden societal debate, which really wasn't a societal debate. Okay. So, yes, we will see more of them. Yeah. The abortion one, I think, is one of the more effective ones for the reasons Althea listed.
Yeah, and I think it goes after that part of the electorate the Liberals want to make sure they lock down, and that is women and women in suburbs and things like that. But let me switch topics, switch gears a little bit and talk about some other political news of the past week. Obviously, the government went on a victory lap after they secured the lifting of the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum, but it still has this giant problem with China. Have a listen to the Prime Minister earlier this week on that.
We are going to continue to engage on a diplomatic level with China to ensure that the Canadians are you know, well treated as much as possible, and mostly that we move towards releasing the Canadians who've been arbitrarily detained for political reasons. This is something that we remain very concerned about.
I didn't expect that it would become easier in some ways to deal with the Trump administration than China. Maybe that's naive of me, but it's almost like they have figured out how to deal with Trump and to get what they need sometime. Okay, Chantal's already shaking her head at me, so I'll just go to her.
I am shaking my head at you because we understand the American system. It's a democratic system, whatever you may think of Donald Trump. It doesn't even compare to the difficulty of dealing with a regime that has the aspirations that China has and that operates the way China operates. So if we are going to have run-ins with the U.S., I think we can find allies easily within civil society. We can't even begin to penetrate the Chinese system to build some rapport de force with the Chinese government. And if we changed governments tomorrow, that next government would not be better equipped to do so.
And ironically, it's probably because of the U.S. problems with China that the tariffs, you know, got lifted maybe a little bit faster, just so Donald Trump could point to that and say, well, look how I'm doing on trade on another issue. Is there some lesson so there's no parallel, there's no lesson here, Andrew, for the government on how to deal with one or the other? They're just too different and too unpredictable.
Well, first off, I should point out that the government is claiming that it was their own retaliatory tariffs that finally brought Donald Trump to heel. I'm not sure there's a lot of evidence for that. What's common to both of them, of course, is they're both large, unpredictable governments and superpowers who we have very little leverage over. So you play the best hand you can, and it's also hard to really assess how the government's doing on that because nobody would have been able to do this very easily. Maybe they've made some mistakes, maybe they've made some good moves. But it's hard to attribute too much credit or blame for their handling of either of those files. What one suspects, however, and maybe I hope to be proven wrong, but I suspect as the election draws nearer, the Chinese are going to ratchet up the pressure because when you've got hostages, Canadian hostages, at some point this country's going to notice that again. And at some point, if the Chinese get very obstreperous, it could become a very emotional issue in the middle of an election campaign. So, as I say, I hope that's not the case, but I think one should anticipate that possibility.
Althea?
Yeah, I don't know if, like Kevin Garrett was in prison for a very long time in China, and it's not because there was a lack of effort from the government trying to get him out, but apparently it seems hostage taking is something that China does when it doesn't like what else is going on with regards to extradition treaties with the United States here in Canada. I think that the parallels are there aren't really that many to make. I agree with Chantal's point. I do think that we understand how the American system works, and we kind of understand what Donald Trump was after, which is a win. He wants to get NAFTA 2.0 passed before the summer, and we are now in a position to help him do that. And Mike Pence's visit that was planned weeks before these tariffs came down, they would have been, obviously that would have been the storyline if he'd been here and the tariffs had not been removed yet. With regards to China, I think the government is very risk adverse because it doesn't want to do anything to jeopardize the 2 Canadians that have been arrested. Sure. And the government's advice from bureaucrats has always been, pretty much in every situation with China, is a very risk adverse strategy. And I think one really does need to be asked if that is the right strategy. And if it is not, what are we willing to sacrifice if we do take a stronger stance?
Chantal, do you want to respond to that on the China point? Yeah.
To the point of this becoming an issue in the election because China would kind of heighten pressure. I'm guessing, and I'm only guessing, that if I were sitting in China, I would see a big advantage at raising the temperature on this in the middle of a Canadian election campaign if the hope was that I would get a different government that would be more amenable to my demands. In this case, that is far from obvious a play because what do you get? You get Trudeau defeated, and then you get an even less Chinese-friendly government in the shape of the Conservatives. So I'm not sure what the interest in that election play would be.
Well, the Chinese have not been behaving terribly rationally throughout this event. They seem to have an absolute, overwhelming interest in this one person getting her home. So that's the danger, is when you're in that kind of thing and people are tempted to play games to pressure politicians, Democratic politicians in the middle of an election campaign. That's the danger, is you get into miscalculations.
Okay, I got to leave it there. Good conversation, everybody. Thank you. But before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast. You got extra content there. This week, we're going to talk about the federal government's plans for its journalism fund. That should be interesting. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational. That issue just makes me happy. Up next on The National, as firefighters in Alberta battle wildfire flames, we'll look at how a small town in the U.S. is trying to better protect people there from wildfire smoke.
We can't stop the fires, but we can at least do something to create safer spaces inside.
First, though, a preview of this week's Sunday interview. Chris Wiley, the Canadian whistleblower who helped expose the Cambridge Analytica scandal. He recently sat down with Ian to talk about why we need to demand more from Facebook.
You know, when you look at how Facebook responded to the mass murders in New Zealand, right, and they say this every single time, we build these things and they're global and it's really complicated and things happen. Right? And we're really sorry that they do, but it's really complicated. And for me, when I hear that, I hear, a company like Boeing say, yeah, well, aerospace engineering is really complicated and sometimes their planes fall out of the sky, right? We would not tolerate that. So, for me, Facebook's defense is the best argument to say why we should be regulating them, because it is complicated. So we need to ensure that they perform due diligence on their products before they release them to the public.
As firefighters struggle to get a handle on the wildfire burning out of control near the town of High Level, Alberta, Environment Canada is warning people about the dangers of smoke. Special air quality statements have been issued for parts of Alberta, BC, and the Yukon. Children, seniors, and people with pre-existing conditions are being told to watch out for symptoms and take precautions. The advice that's usually given, stay cool, hydrate, reduce exposure, but a small town in the U.S. with its own history of forest fires is taking more concrete action. And as Kim Brunheimer explains, it could actually become a model for how other communities protect themselves from smoke.
We had a number of larger trees, When Steve Siebert first bought this land in rural Montana almost 20 years ago, Lolo National Forest, beautiful and ominous, loomed so close to his house, he says, it was like living in a pyre.
One tree catches on fire, it would be hoped that there wasn't enough heat to spread and light the whole hill on fire.
That's what happened in 2017 when several huge fires tore through Montana, covering 1.4 million hectares, an area almost as large as the fire in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Now the community of Missoula, population 74,000, repeatedly scarred by flames, is trying to fireproof itself. But come fire season, Missoula has more to worry about than just the flames.
When we are measuring the air quality, we pull the...
Sarah Cofield is one of the few local public health officials in the country dedicated to this one issue, smoke management. Her smoke-specific role with Missoula's health department came directly as a result of the problems experienced here in 2017.
I bet you we couldn't even measure how thick the smoke was at that hour. It was
During those fires, Cofield collected air samples every hour.
The darker the dot, clearly the worse it is, and the more disgusting the air was at the time. And that's just would be in your lungs and going into your bloodstream.
Going inside is no escape from the smoke because normal air filters simply aren't good enough.
The current standard in the United States for new construction is a MERV 8. And
that's not enough to filter?
Yeah, a MERV 8 is not rated to remove the fine particulate matter that you find in wildfire smoke.
So Missoula officials are now outfitting as many buildings as they can with new, more powerful filters. Take the library. During wildfires, the air quality measured inside was just as bad as it was outside. So right there, the new library they're building next door will have higher rated air filters, creating a refuge for vulnerable citizens. Protecting buildings from wildfire smoke is a relatively new concept, one Cofield hopes will catch on in other fire-prone communities.
We can't stop the fires, but we can at least do something to create safer spaces inside.
You can still see, actually.
As we walk around Siebert's neighborhood, he says the fireproofing is far from done.
They certainly cleared it out a lot.
There are more trees to clear, more brush to burn. All that work won't stop the smoke, but with so many new filters being installed across the city, at least he won't have to worry about finding a shelter with cleaner air when he sees smoke on the hills. Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, Missoula, Montana.
The moment is up next. I love it. How two Canadian backpackers found each other 50 years later. But I also love this first. If you are wondering where Ian is today, I was. He's gone back to school, sort of.
It gives me distinct pleasure to confer upon you, Ian Harvey Hanumansing, the title and the degree, Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Recognized for excellence and eminence in his field, Dr. Hanumansing was also asked to speak at UBC's spring convocation, remembering the challenges he faced as a graduate from Mount Allison in 1983 and noting the challenges facing today's graduates. He offered this advice.
And so as a graduate from a long, long time ago, from a university on the other side of the country, here is my message to you, the class of 2019. Embrace optimism. Enrich your community wherever it is you end up settling. And more than anything, enjoy this moment. You've earned it. Congratulations.
So congratulations to you too, Ian. A ritual of youth for generations of Canadians backpacking in Europe. Seen here in a 1969 photo. That's Dave and Doug, and they happened to meet, spend a week traveling with the group, and then they all went their separate ways in Europe and, yes, in life. Now, 50 years later, Doug spent weeks trying to find Dave once again, but all he remembered was Dave from Vancouver Island, and it turns out that was enough, and their reunion is our moment.
We were standing in line at the Cologne Youth Hostel, and a guy behind me says, "Hey, buddy, that's a funny-looking flag."
I informed him that I was from the same country. I was with 3 Americans, and they decided that we wanted to go watch the moon landing.
So we went to the U.S. Embassy in Bad Godesberg and pounded on the table until they got us a color television. I've gone through an incredible journey in the last 6 weeks, finding all of the Americans by various means of sleuthing, but no one remembered Dave's last name.
On Tuesday night, I got a text from my nephew in Edmonton saying, "Is this you?" And apparently he had flooded all the newspapers on Vancouver Island. All he knew is Dave was from Vancouver Island.
In less than 24 hours, it went from looking for Dave to finding Dave. I called him today at noon. We're having a reunion in Monterey, California in June.
50 years later, we're all getting back together, yeah.
How much do you love that story? The thing that bonded them, they say, was watching the moon landing on the floor of that German embassy. And now all of them, all the people in that photo, are gathering again in Monterey for a reunion. That is the power of the internet. That's The National for May 23rd. Have a good night, everybody.